All right, I'm Will,
I'm Andrew.
I'm Giancarlo.
I'm Nathan.
and we're the Planned Operations Smartphone Tracker sub-team.
So just to give a quick recap on who we are and what we do, POSA is basically in charge of collecting, storing, and visualizing data. We aim to provide a sustainable and a pretty simple way to collect data on our plants and how our plants are performing so that anyone who's interested, including ourselves obviously, has access to this information. So in particular, we consist of three main tools. As I said, the three components are collecting, storing, and visualizing. So on the collecting side, we have the ODK app, which is the app that the plant operators use to fill out data based on how the plants are performing. That data is then sent to our backend database, which is currently now Firebase. And then from there, we have our front-end website that pulls data from Firebase to display in graph form, table form, and to give people the option to view it by plan in a more organized fashion, and as well download data if they so desire. So with regards to the website, since the last symposium, what we've done is, one, we finally switched to pulling our data from Google Fusion Tables to pulling it from Firebase. Google Fusion Tables was finally discontinued about 5 days ago, so now in order to make sure that we're getting the most up-to-date data, we're pulling from Firebase. As well, we've been working on adding new features to the graphs. In particular, one thing we want to add is chlorine dosage. That's something that's pretty important, but that we have not been including in the past. We've only been including turbidity measures and coagulant dosage. But with including the chlorine dosage, there will be some more redesigns to the graph that will kind of have to be implemented a little in the future. So then going on to the future work for the site, as I said, we want to redesign the graph so as to include this extra data. And if we were just to put the chlorine dosage on the graphs that we have now, it would be very cluttered and not very informative to anyone who's trying to learn about the plants. So we're thinking of how to better display the data, given that now we're trying to show more data. Another thing we want to do is that some plants have multiple filters, so it'd be nice to show the turbidity levels at each stage, coming out at each filter, as opposed to just the first filter. So in particular, this would be kind of making the data that we show a little more specific to each plant, as opposed to just some general mode that each plant is having to fit into. And then lastly, as I said, we want to make it easier for someone to view the data they're interested in. So we want to also add functionality to kind of turn on or off certain data points, such that anyone who's interested in, say, just the turbidity dosage coming out of the filter can view that without having the graph and the tables cluttered with other information.
Yeah, so talking a little bit about the visualization system that Giancarlo was referring to on our website, one of the big things that we discussed and have discussed in this semester and past semesters was the problem of not actually getting data from plant operators. If we don't have data from these plant operators, we have nothing to visualize, so even if the system is fully built, it's kind of useless in this regard. So something I was working on last semester and a little bit into this semester was the email server. So like I said during symposium and previous presentations, we needed a way to keep operators informed and aware that the data they were sending was, one, getting to us, and two, we wanted to let them know if it wasn't getting to us, that they needed to be submitting data more often. So we devised a way of using emails and creating this kind of email server script to automate notifications to them, to let them know, like, hey, this is the data that you've been sending. Either tell them it's a great job, you've been doing a good job, keep it up, or let them know that they've been kind of slacking on that regard, and kind of push them to send the data in for a data visualization system. So as you can see here, this is just an example of an email that someone would get with graphs included with the data that they were sending. Here's an example of these graphs that if someone wasn't sending data, that they would get along with the message. However, we realized quickly that emails might not be the best way to get to these plant operators. So something that we devised and something that we've been working on this semester was transferring the script that I wrote last semester and trying to integrate it with a Facebook bot that Will was working on for this semester that he'll talk about a little bit more.
Yeah, so as Nathan said, we're moving on to Facebook bot in order to hopefully get more responses from our plant operators. So some progress that we outlined at symposium is that at the time it had current add random messaging functionality, and as also it could only send messages to you after you message it first, because that's how it extracted the ID of who to send messages to. So since then, we've integrated the code that was being used for the email server and put it into the Facebook bot, and specifically the code that generates the message by pulling data from through like a weather API and other things. And as shown here, it'll tell you an update on the data that you submitted. It'll give you a message if you've either been keeping up with the data or been missing out on a bunch of submissions, as well as providing some weather information, because that's info that might be helpful. Because like if, for example, if it rains, plant operators might need to add like more coagulant or something like that. So yeah, an issue that we ran into was after combining our code, we started experiencing an infinite loop where the bot, after you send the bot a message, it would just continuously send you messages until we killed the program. So that's something that we've been working on squashing. And something else that we also need to work on is figure out how to properly add attachments and pictures. So for the past few weeks, we've been using an open source Facebook API, but there are a lot of bugs in the code that the creator didn't really like hash out. And as a result, a lot of the methods that we were trying to use, like send message, haven't been working properly. So a lot of our work has been in pretty much rewriting the API for our needs.
Yeah, so along with the things that Will just mentioned that we would have to work on for next semester, some of the next steps that we want to take is migrate hosting to AWS, because we don't want to run the script from someone's laptop locally. It would be really helpful to have this running remotely on maybe an EC2 instance, a virtual machine that we can just host remotely. Another thing that we want to do is be able to iterate through a list of plant operator Facebook IDs and then just ping them automatically on maybe a bi-weekly or bi-monthly basis to let them know like the updates that we're trying to let them know about. This would be a lot easier than having someone just like message them every single time. We also want to be able to download attachments sent by the operators from the database. And something that we kind of discussed right now is, right now the way our bot is working is that you have to send a message to the operator, or you have to send a message to the operator or to get a message back. And we do want a way to just have this automated, but we think it would be very interesting to keep some kind of system where the plant operator could actually ping our bot anytime outside of the automated circumstances and get an update if they want to. And that's something we want to work on incorporating in. Yeah, so that, as well as something else that we discussed, was also creating a simple FAQ portion for the chatbot. So if the plant operator is having problems maybe submitting forms, we could have a simple way of just kind of decoding those messages and letting them know, like, okay, if you're having problems submitting like a form through this method, these are the steps you should take to troubleshoot it. This will help mitigate a lot of the problems we already have with operators not being able to send in forms. A lot of times if they run into issues and they can't easily find their solution to their problem at all, of course they're not going to be able to send in that form data. So by integrating this like FAQ with the chatbot, it would probably help increase the amount of data submissions that we get.
So this semester, we're also going to make our own form connection app. And like previous semester, we were basically using an ODK format. And for some reason, the app is like no longer sending forms, and like we don't really know like what is like going on, and we don't have the code, so we can't really debug it. So we made a decision to make our own app, so then we have our control of our own like code base. So for this semester, we basically got the basic functionality of the app built out. And like basically now, like user can basically upload forms from their phone devices over the phone storage, and it will like go to the Firebase storage, and then from there like we can see the forms and like we can pull it. So in the future, we will want to basically connect, basically use the Google Drive to Google Firebase and have them be able to upload their own forms, and then we can pull from there. And basically, we're going to want to flush out some UI bugs here and there, and just clean up the app just to make it more secure.
Thank you.